Okay, everybody, this particular note slash video is about chapters 7 and 8 for Things Fall Apart. It is a good section, even though there's some pretty harsh things that happen and that we find out, but it deals with a lot of characterization of Okonkwo and foreshadowing of things that have already happened and things that are about to happen further on. All right, so let's start with a little bit of some chapter 7. And in this, at the very beginning, we learn more of Ekimafina, who has stayed with Okonkwo for 3 years now. It's been 3 years since he has acquired him from the neighboring village way back when the woman was killed in the marketplace, and they were able to get a woman and a young boy instead of going to war. And so they didn't know what they were going to do with the young boy in regards to all of that. So he has stayed with them, and he really has become a part of their family and a contributing part of their tribe. He has become someone that partakes in their traditions and their rituals, and he is liked by everybody, especially Okonkwo's other son. And all of the other children really do look up to him. So he is really settled in, and he even begins to call Okonkwo father. But his time staying there is going to be kind of run short. And so, like I said, he becomes this big brother and role model to Nwoye, who is Okonkwo's other son. And remember, we know that he doesn't look very highly on this individual son of his. He thinks that he's kind of lazy and is a little bit more on the feminine side. But because of his influence that Ikemefuna has had on Nuye, Okonkwo notices that Nuye has become more and more manly, and he likes that about that. And he realizes that it is because of Okonkwo's influence that Nuye has become like this. And so he often has the boys to his hut, which he calls an obi, and he likes to tell them of war stories. And he is telling one of stories where he had battled an individual and got his first head, and he likes to tell of the blood and the gory stuff of it. But Niobe is secretly wishing, and here is kind of like a theme of secrets, which happens a lot throughout the novel, but wishes he was with his mother hearing her stories, which are more folk-like, and he likes them, and he just enjoys the company more of his mother. And so that kind of characterizes him a little bit more. He is not the ghoulish, chauvinistic warrior man like his father. He has really just more feeling. But at that time, again, remember that Okonkwo felt that anything that was related to woman or having feeling was a huge, big no-no and a bad sign. So you weren't allowed to be like that. We learned that the locusts return after 7 years, and they say that the locusts only come in a generation, and that in one's lifetime you really only see them once, which, hello, if it's after 7 years, how come you don't see them? I've seen lots of 7 years. So, but anyway, so it's not like it's a calendar like, oh, 7 years is up, here come the locusts. But they're saying about that time, and the people, instead of fearing it or getting scared, they get excited. And the reason why they're excited is because these little bugs, I guess, are very enjoyable for them to eat once they've been cooked. They like to cook them up crunchy, like a good chicken wing, I guess, and dip them in some palm oil and some other things. So it's kind of like pretzels and dip, I guess, but they really enjoy cooking and eating them. So this is a happy kind of time. And so we see a lot of contrast between, the things that people enjoy and that are happy or that are good omens, if you will, and then those that are bad. If you haven't noticed that, that's one thing that I want to bring your attention to. So it is when Okonkwo is in his hut with the boys, after the locusts, they're eating them and whatnot, that an individual comes to his hut, and that it is now time that they need to do something with Ikemefuna, but that Okonkwo is not to participate. And the reason for that is because that Ikemefuna has begun to call him father. And when Naomi hears this, he bursts into tears once again, giving his father that indication that he's a little bit more on the womanly side, and he doesn't see that. He sees it as a sign of weakness, and gets really irritated with him, and all of that he had talked about before of him becoming manly has kind of gone to the wayside. And he remembers once again kind of like what a wuss Naomi really is. But this part of the indication that it was important that Okonkwo not participate because Ikamufina called him father was really important in regards to a cultural detail. Because once that outsider from that other village has begun to take on a family persona and has attached themselves in that way, that there is importance to the family unit. And so that says a lot about their cultural details in that way. But we, knowing that Okonkwo is very harsh and very manly and does not like to seem to be weak, we know that this is not going to end well for Ikamufina. Chapter 7 continued. They decide to tell Ikamufina that he is headed home to see his mom and his sister to go back to live with them. And as he is walking the long journey, he is thinking about his mom and is very excited to see her and is excited to see his little sister, who was 3 at the time of him leaving, but is now older. And we know that the father is out of the picture, and he never really had a good relationship with his father before. And that's kind of important too in his characterization, because here is Ikamufina, the boy that Okonkwo felt was, his true son, of one that was brave and masculine and manly. But we see that he had a different side to him as well, that he favored his mother and sister, just like Nuoye did. And Okonkwo doesn't really know that, but we see a different side of Ikamufina. But while they're deep into the woods, Ikamufina is attacked by the other men, and he looks to Okonkwo for help. Like, I can't believe this is happening. Please help me, O father. Kind of like in Julius Caesar, when Caesar had said to Brutus, "Et tu, Brute, help me." And poor Brutus decides, well, I have no choice. I have to kill you as well. And that's kind of what happens here. But instead of wanting to do it for what's best for everybody, Okonkwo does it because it's best for him. He does not want to appear as though he is weak while everybody else kind of takes part in the killing. He has to seem and project his manliness, so he cuts down Ikamufina. He's the one that actually supplies the blow that kills him in the long run. When he returns home, he's obviously very upset, because we do know that he did love him and saw him as a son. And when he returns home, Nuoye realizes what has happened without so many words being said. And he realizes that his father had taken part in the killing. And I think that makes this even harder for him. And so he breaks, it says, for the second time in his life. It is one thing to have your brother / role model killed, but to have them killed by your father, that's what kind of has broken Naomi. And it is mentioned that one other time in his life he felt this way, and that's when he had heard a baby cry from the evil forest, where people who are considered bad or bad omens go to die without being buried, and that's where they leave newborn twins left to die, because they are kind of like, again, a bad omen. And because of both of those things, which are traditions in their culture, he begins to question his traditions and his culture, and that's kind of bad, and puts a bigger strain on the relationship with his father, because we know that Okonkwo accepts all of those traditions and doesn't question them. And so here we can see that this is, it's already only chapter 7, but this is going to cause a big problem and a big conflict between the two of them. And even with Naomi, his relationship and his allegiance even to his own society. With Okonkwo participating in the death of Ikamufina, his actions, because he was told not to do it, and heaven forbid, he does what he's told, it was a grave sin. And so he has not only damaged his relationship with his son, but he causes damage to his son's allegiance to the society, but also is beginning to damage his position within the society. And again, that kind of all goes to the title of our story, Things Fall Apart. In chapter 8, because of the killing and the death of Ikamufina, he misses him. And so it's understandable that he falls into a deep depression. He can't really eat. He hasn't eaten in days. He doesn't sleep well. And he becomes to feel very weak physically as well as emotionally. And you know that any kind of weak feelings from him, he feels is very womanish, and he does not want to do that, but he cannot seem to pull himself out of it. But it is his daughter, Nzima, who brings him food and basically tells him, look, you need to knock this off. You better eat and get to it. You've got things that you've got to do. And so she kind of slaps him back into reality. And the whole time he keeps wishing here that she was a boy and that she should have been my son. And then he berates himself, which kind of like berating, meaning that he tears himself up or beats himself up for it. And he calls himself, knock it off. You're acting like an old woman, not only in feeling weak and moping, but also for wishing for this girl to be your son. But definitely the way in which he's behaving, he's basically saying, dude, you're a woman, knock it off. You're too manly for that. So Okonkwo builds up enough strength to go visit his good friend whose daughter is getting ready to marry. And here he complains about his sons, kind of saying, I don't know if Naomi will ever be, good enough, ripe enough, ready enough to marry because of the weaknesses that he has. And so this shows the closeness that these two individuals have for their friendship, because they're able to talk and discuss these types of things, but other things are brought up as well. And his friend kind of reprimands Okonkwo for participating in Ikumufuna's death, kind of like saying, look, the oracle and the elders told you not to, and you did it anyway, and you shouldn't have participated. His friend didn't participate, and nobody saw him as being, weak or womanish. Nobody thought anything of it because he wasn't supposed to participate, and neither was Okonkwo. So we know if you're not supposed to do something, and we know that they value the gods and the elders, that something is going to happen because of what he has done in regards to Ikamufuna's death. We also learn at the end of the chapter here, this story is going to be important later, that an old wise man from a neighboring village had died. And that wasn't the big ordeal. It was the other part of the story with his wife dying soon after he did. And it's because of that Okonkwo questions the man's masculinity and leadership as an elder within that village because of how close the man was to his wife. Once again, making him, meaning Okonkwo, a very chauvinistic individual who found not only women's emotions and the non-necessity for them, but if anyone were to have a close relationship with a woman, he kind of looks down upon that relationship as well. And I don't believe that everybody within their village and society believes that as well. And so these are going to be things that kind of, again, help to bring him down and to cause things to fall apart for Okonkwo. Hopefully, and the last thing, I almost forgot about that. Yikes. And so here, we have this mentioned in our intro notes. This is the first mention that we hear of the white man or the white skins that they talk about passing through the villages. And that's obviously going to be an issue because of them wanting to come in and modernize and colonize within their area. Hopefully these notes have helped, and they'll help you with your note or your study guide, and that you continue to read the next few chapters. And if you guys have questions, please feel free to email me.